We don't have any proof that consciousness is coming from the brain. What makes life really meaningful for us are things that you cannot describe physically. You can really learn a lot about psyche by looking inside of yourself. You discover that there are normally invisible dimensions of reality that are very real. Major problem here is you have to experience those states to even believe that they are possible and that they are real.
Yeah. Hello, Stanislav Grof, and thank you for being in Romania for the first time as a guest of the Journey of the Heart. How do you feel in Romania? We already done the conference of Cluj. How did you feel the public and the country?
First of all, great appreciation for your and Elena's invitation. We wouldn't be here without you. What I would like to say, this is not my first trip to Romania. I was, in the 50s, I was here in Mamaia, spending, I think, 2 weeks in Mamaia. We had a great time at the ocean, but this was a very different Romania, also very different experience, because you guys, you have opened your heart. You have never experienced hosts like that. I mean, we have traveled all over the world. That amount of heart, and you have developed hard breath work. You work in the heart of Romania.
Stan, it was a great pleasure for us to receive you and Christina in this journey of the heart, as we know what we are doing, mainly because the holotropic breathwork was mainly instrument for us and for our discoveries. So your work and the holotropic breathwork and your books that we are publishing at our publishing house, this was really the spine of everything what we done, and really it was the opportunity to discover what now we call heart breathwork. So thank you for being here. It's really very important for me personally and for Elena, really.
There is another reason for gratitude. I am one of the founders of a new branch of psychology, which is still controversial, has not been accepted.
That's why I like you.
And Elena had the foresight. I mean, she started publishing, books in this, what many of us in the United States believe is the cutting edge of psychology. And I know again that the reaction of the public to this was initially a little strange, weird books, and she managed to stay there and then get your help, and we are so grateful for the fact that you are bringing this to Romania.
We go closer, in fact, to the main subject of our meeting today,
okay.
the transpersonal psychology and what this means. One of the most important things for us is that your work allowed what we call spirituality to get a little bit closer of the scientific field. What could you say about this, about psychology and spirituality? In your approach?
You see, we have all gotten, as part of our university training, really a sort of materialistic indoctrination. And I was born in Prague, so those of us who grew up in Eastern Europe, we got an extra heavy dose of a very strange materialism, which was really was Hegel, which is a great spiritual philosopher, but then put on sort of matter from Feuerbach, who was a materialist, and the dialectic which was there is, in Hegel's words, is a dynamics of the universal spirit.
Yeah.
And so this is part of this problem, is that the whole academic community believes in monistic materialism, and we studied what I call holotropic states of consciousness, which is a kind of a subgroup, very significant subgroup of non-ordinary states of consciousness. And there were observations, there were experiences that just showed the importance of spirituality as it is represented in the human psyche, but also in the universal scheme of things. And that's a major challenge.
To have a spiritual experience from the point of view of the classical academical psychiatry and psychology seem to be more pathological than
Yes. We don't have a category in psychiatry. This is a mystical experience. This is a mystical spiritualism. People get diagnoses, you see. And there are even papers and books about founders of the religions, big founders of religion, prophets and so on. What was their pathology, including Jesus. You see, I mean, Jesus had experiences in the desert. Devil came to him and was tempting him, and Saint Peter, when he was still Saul, he had the kind of blinding experience of Jesus, and John of the Cross had the vision of the apocalypse, and Buddha had the experience under the tree of enlightenment with Kama Mara, with his army. So for psychiatrists, this is all crazy. So Mohammed's visions.
All the history of the human mystic revelation, it's a pathological history. From the point of view of the mainstream science.
Yeah. Ramakrishna is a schizophrenic. Teresa of Avila was a hysterical psychotic. Saint John of the Cross was a hereditary degenerative, and so on. And there is a belief that these experiences that these people had were schizophrenic. Now, schizophrenia cross-culturally is about like 1% of the population. Now, how do you explain that experiences of crazy 1% had such influence on people that billions of people now are sort of excited about them, are following them? It created religions. We would not have the cathedrals. We would not have the Muslim mosques. We would not have the Hindu temples.
The art history.
Incredible music, incredible art. This doesn't come from some yet unknown pathology hitting the brain. I mean, we are talking about some much more fundamental element. You see, however, spirituality was distorted when religions became organized, and many of them actually losing the connection to the spiritual source that the founders experienced. So we have all kinds of bad stories in human history about what religions have done, not just to people, to themselves, because the organized religions divide the world. Religion is supposed to bind things together.
Yeah.
Religo is bind together. Religare. Yeah. But the organized religions, they unite a certain group of people, but then set that group against another. Yeah. And this is, see, we are Christians, you're pagans, no place for you. We are Muslims, you are infidels. Jihad, holy war against people who...
So the religion lost its initial purpose to put the people together.
Yeah, today it's more part of a problem than part of the solution. Because even inside of the religions, there are centuries of fights between Protestants and Catholics who disagree on certain aspects. Sunnis and Shiites are destroying each other's temples. So this kind of expression of spirituality is not very helpful or useful to the brain.
But what brought your work in transpersonal psychology in this equation? In which way the holotropic states of consciousness brought a light in this problem?
Well, we studied, a wide range of experiences that people have. There is an important subgroup of non-ordinary experiences for which psychiatry does not have a name. So I made up a name for it, called them holotropic, something that takes you toward wholeness. Holos is whole, trepein is moving toward, like heliotropism, the flower moves towards the sun. And so these experiences, like experiences that the shamans have when their psyche is opening, the kind of experiences that the initiates have in what's called rites of passage, some native rituals, the things that were happening in ancient mysteries of death and rebirth, and the experiences of the yogis, the Buddhists, the Taoists, the Christian mystics. Okay, so we studied those, and we found out they have a healing potential. They have a transformative potential. I believe even evolutionary potential. And what's now most important is what we call heuristic. I found it from Archimedes. So when we study them, they become a source of paradigm-breaking, sort of revolutionary new information about consciousness, about the psyche, and even about the nature of reality, actually.
Yeah.
So I believe that if we study these experiences, there will be a revolution in psychology and psychiatry comparable to what the physicists had to go through in the first 3 decades, from Newton to Einstein and quantum theory. And not only that, but that it would be a logical complement to what happened already in our understanding of matter, which is radical, which is very, very difficult for people who don't work in the field to understand. Yeah. And we need that kind of
such an experience, so we can change, in fact, our perspective on ourselves and on the reality. This is the shift paradigm. Major.
And you see what happened, that initially during the scientific revolution, the industrial revolution, there was great excitement about reason. There were new discoveries, and they were turned into inventions, and then it started changing the world, and there was this excitement about reason. We are rational people, not like those primitive savages. Yeah. And this is like any talk about these spiritual things. It's like an embarrassing leftover from the Dark Ages, from the childhood of humanity. Notre Dame was renamed for a number of years those Temple of Reason now. But that what happened is that not everything that's not rational is irrational. There is something that is transrational. Mystics are not irrational.
That includes the rational.
Yeah, they can, they can handle everyday situations perfectly fine, unless it's at the time when they're having really powerful experiences of the other realms.
I think this is a very important point about rational, irrational. You mean transrational? That means is including the rationality
and transcends, because they had experiences from dimensions of reality that we know are real now, or have significant support. Or these dimensions are real, but they are not available for senses. You have to be in a holotropic state to become aware. Mm-hmm. Physicists know that there are invisible or inaudible dimensions.
Yeah, dimensions.
But if you cannot through the senses, then you use microscope, or you use a telescope, or some kind of detectors of vibrations and so on. But they have to be physical. We believe that there are, which we see only a very small range of the electromagnetic spectrum, and once we get into ultraviolet, infrared, we don't. Some animals do.
What is interesting is that the transpersonal psychology links different fields of the science, like, I don't know, quantum physics and biochemistry and other fields, frontier fields, to shift this paradigm.
Well, you see, we began with a small group of people: Abraham Maslow, Tony Sutic, Jim Fadiman, myself. Viktor Frankl came for one of these meetings from Vienna. We felt that this has to be incorporated, that the human psychology has to cover the whole spectrum, including these states, because they are not created by some pathology. There's something that Jung called collective unconscious, and it is out there. You can have an experience from those dimensions, historical or mythological, and you get information for which you don't have access in this. It's like there's enormous amount of information that we created electronically. If we are sitting here and we had a sort of the right kind of means, we could have number of experiences. You know, if you were in America, I would say you could see a Hollywood movie, you could see a Mickey Mouse cartoon, you know, you could see what we call Star Trek, sort of a fantasy into the future. And this is coming to me through that box, but it's not made in that box. And it is my experience, but not really. It's a collective. You can go there, anybody can go there. We can, if we have a satellite, you know, it could be from Japan. If we would put on the moon, the information could go on the moon. So it has an objective, the collective unconscious has an objective quality. If you experience something from the collective unconscious, and I do, like Shiva's heaven, we can talk about it like in the same way in which we would talk about independent visit of London. You know, there's Westminster Abbey, and there's the Big Ben, and there's...
So, just a minute. In a way, you want to say that these fields of consciousness that till now was unconscious, they become... we become aware...
Conscious in holotropic states.
Yeah. But can we integrate this information, these fields in our...
Okay, that was your original question.
Yeah.
So, you know, we worked on it and says, you know, we put in the information about these holotropic states that is missing in traditional academic psychiatry. It's coming from, you know, from thanatology, from anthropology. It's coming from parapsychology. So we can sort of incorporate it, and it would make sense because it would not make a schizophrenic out of the founder of the religion. It would treat with respect the ritual and spiritual history of humanity. And we felt, you know, this makes sense, but we couldn't bridge that gap to our education, the hardcore science. And for me, the turning point, actually using the title of Fritjof Capra, of his second book, the breakthrough for me came when Fritjof Capra's book, The Tao of Physics, came. Mm-hmm. He's a physicist, and he showed that actually the most revolutionary, most advanced developments in physics, after they started breaking out of what he called the Cartesian-Newtonian 17th century paradigm, with radioactivity, X-rays, when they started finding the emptiness of atoms and subatomic particles and all those things, that they moved way, way away from the 17th century sort of Newtonian Cartesian. But all the other disciplines, biology, you know, medicine, of course, psychiatry and psychology and so on, they modeled themselves after Newtonian mechanics. To be scientific, you have to somehow comply with the mechanistic principles of Newtonian physics. This is a material universe, so the physics are the experts about the world, and all the other disciplines have to comply.
This is a duality. So, this is the duality, to think that only physics can see the true reality.
So Fritjof Capra's book, The Tao of Physics, had a had a cover with Nataraja, the Shiva in his dancing form, Lord of Dance, and it was on the background of pictures from what's called cloud chamber, which is that the physicists are using when they accelerate particles and there are collisions. That's where they see these particles. So there were these particles from quantum relativistic physics on the background, and there was a Shiva dancing his cosmic dance. And he showed the convergence now, how modern physics was actually converging to something that was known like thousands of years ago, that the information that people get from inner experiences, from deep meditation, from spiritual practice. And so Fritjof and I started doing joint seminars. We really hit it off. We became good friends, and we would travel to Honolulu and all over America and so on. And it was called Journeys Beyond Space and Time. And Fritjof would take the first morning and tell people how physicists now see matter. The deeper you go, the less stuff you find, and ultimately you end up with something that's much more consciousness than stuff. Probabilities, mathematics, equations, and so on. And matter is ultimately empty. The universe is not solid. There are no objects. Everything vibrates. So you be.
But why is it so difficult to integrate this? For example, we see after every workshop and seminar that we do with people, they have really important experience, holotropic experiences, and after that, when the experience it's over, it's very difficult to integrate in the linear life, in this dimension, the experience. Why is it so difficult to put them together?
I mean, it is difficult because we live in a culture that is materialistic, that has really lost spirituality. It has religion, but it lost spirituality, and we're paying tremendous toll for it. And so somebody who has these experiences becomes like a stranger in a strange land. You have now a certain way of looking at things that is not shared by your culture. Yeah. If you grow up in any other society, not the industrial civilization, any other society honor these holotropic states, and they spend a lot of time trying to develop effective and safe ways, and they had rituals. Mm. This was their major vehicle for spiritual practice, major source of artistic inspiration. That's where they were cultivating intuition and so on. And so when you live in that kind of culture, they actually, when you reach puberty, this was the first major rite of passage, they would put you through an experience, and that actually connects you to the worldview of the culture that you are living in. Now, people in the 60s, now I'm not defending the 60s and the hippies and so on, but they suddenly had in their hands very, very powerful means of changing consciousness. One of the ways that you don't need drugs, but there's, one of the ways is drugs. And they suddenly developed a whole new of thinking. I don't want to go with this culture that this culture of biological creatures who destroy their environment, who destroy what they need for life, like clean water, clean air, clean soil that we, and sort of, taking non-renewable resources, plundering, fossil resources and turning it into the pollution, which is the last thing that a live being, live organism needs. And so they say, may love, not war. We are sort of all brothers. Let's have planetaries. Let's not fight. Let's have. So
but this process seemed to, in the last 40 years of in the Occidental society, something really changed. It looks like now this process comes to a resolution. What is what is this
Which
changement with this transformation of the consciousness that so many people are talking about?
Well, what you see, I mean, we all know we have a global crisis. I mean, if we continue doing what we have been doing, we might not make it. We would not be the first civilization that didn't make it, and they didn't have anywhere the powerful weapons that we have. They were not doing to their environment what we are doing, and they went down. So I think this is an unprecedented situation where we either change into something else. We will not be driven by violence and greed, or we are not going to make it. Terence McKenna, one of the consciousness researchers, said the history of the silly monkey is over, one way or another, which means we either change into, almost like a different species, or it's over. We might be extinct and take quite a few species with us.
But in a holotropic breathwork, when it seemed that the crisis is very deep, that is the healing. Maybe this world crisis is the healing of the world.
Well, my last book is called Healing Our Deepest Wounds. And one of the things that you find, which is interesting for psychology and psychiatry, the psychological history does not start after we are born. Freud said the newborn is a tabula rasa. It's like an erased tablet or a washed blackboard. There's nothing of any particular interest for psychologists that precedes birth, including birth itself.
Yeah.
You can have births that lasted 30, 40, 50 hours. You might have died in the birth canal, had to be revived, resuscitated. And in psychiatry, this would not be considered psychotrauma. The only thing that would matter if it damages your brain cells.
Yeah.
We don't see birth. There's an enormous amount of anger, aggression that's kept in the system, in the unconscious, because the little crying that the baby does after, it's nothing as to compare what would be necessary to respond to that challenging passage that could be life-threatening. The mother can die, the child can, and that's not a psychotrauma, you see. But then we all agree in the profession that right after birth, it's very important. The child psychiatrists and the pediatricians even talk about bonding, that the exchange of looks between the baby and the mother can influence the whole relationship. And certainly all the dynamic schools of psychology believe that nursing is an important. What kind of nursing you get, what kind of experience immediately after birth can influence your whole life. We have now significant research showing that the fetus in the womb is we have prenatal research, Tomatis and other people. So there is suddenly a hole, it's a scotoma, it's a blind spot. You see, the fetus is sensitive before birth, very sensitive after birth, but doesn't notice that anything strange is happening when it's going through the birth canal, and the brain cannot record it. The argument that's given is the cortex is not mature enough. The technical term is myelinized. The neurons don't have the full cover of those fatty sheets for the covers.
But as you said at your conference, the consciousness is not in the brain. So,
what I would say, the only way I can understand it, I mean, we are very proud. I mean, the scientists and so on, we're really rational. There is a logical jump there. I have no other explanation that this is a suppression. The experience, the memory is so scary, we just don't want to do there. So we say, well, this couldn't have mattered. My cortex was not.
So we put the experience in the inconscient field.
Yeah, and so in Cluj, which was by the way, wonderful experience. I mean, the reception of people was just beyond description. Now, I was trying to say we don't have any proof that consciousness is coming from the brain. All we have is lots and lots of observations from neurology, neurosurgery, experimental psychiatry, showing there is a systematic correlation between what is happening in the brain and the states of consciousness. But that correlation, that's all that it is. It's not a proof that consciousness is coming from the brain. There are other alternatives, like in a television set.
Looks more like a transceiver, like a decoder, something.
Yeah, in a television set, I mean, there's a systematic correlation between what's happening in the box and the sound and the picture. And it's a fact. Every technician can looks what's happening with the, with the picture, what's happening with the sound, and can fix it. He can fix the right kind of component. No, this is not a proof that the programs are coming from the box. It still leaves the possibility that it mediates something, but the programs are coming from somewhere else. And we know something, even if we are not experts, we know something about television. We would laugh when somebody would think that if they study the transformers and the wires there, and if they take it to the molecular level, that finally they will understand why suddenly they have a certain kind of a program.
Why the programs are so bad.
We have massive evidence from the study of consciousness that consciousness can do things that the brain cannot possibly do. And this Stuart Hameroff, who initially he got a Nobel Prize, he discovered something that's called microtubules inside of the cells, and there's something that looks like a complex computer. And he said maybe there somehow through quantum processes maybe consciousness is generated. And now there was a television program where he says no, consciousness is a cosmic phenomenon that we can probably trace back all the way to the Big Bang. It is there, it is part of existence. Yeah. It's not something that's coming just from the human brain.
Yeah. Let's go back to the global crisis. If we compare a human being with all the humanity, maybe it's the same. You talked a lot about spiritual emergency. What if the global crisis is just a spiritual emergency for all the humanity? What if the process is a healing, really a healing process, as like in holotropic breathwork?
Well, this is an insight that comes from one person after another, independently. It's not, not that we sort of indoctrinate them. But when you do this inner journey, particularly one form, which we call psychospiritual death rebirth, that takes you, part of it is reliving consciously birth, having what's called second birth. The Christians talk about being reborn. The Hindus talk about being dvija, being twice born. All of us were born anatomically. We are here. We got out of that birth canal, but we carry the heavy, heavy memory, a lot of difficult emotions on a deep level, and a lot of blocked physical energies that we couldn't express. And people in these holotropic states can bring it into consciousness and free themselves from that. And then when they go through it, there are certain sort of difficult images that we see sort of in our world happening. We can discover that there is an aggressivity that relates to the terrorism, in the world, for example. There could be even, encountering some kind of dark archetypes, and a lot of what's happening today in the world is satanic. I mean, 9/11? I mean, this is not an ordinary situation, or the situation with the Islamic extremists and so on. Now, if those kinds of images would come in an inner process, you are in an unordinary state, it would be like purging. You would get that stuff out of your system, and you would have a different system of values, different relationship with people, different relationship with nature, and it would be spiritual opening. but it's dramatic. You see, because we don't have the idea that birth is trauma. Then when people start processing their memory of birth, it's going to be wild. There'll be screaming, there's going to be coughing, and there's going to be all kinds of shaking happening. But that's not pathology. But if we don't have a model to understand what's happening, we put a pathological label on it. So Christina and I, after doing this work with holotropic states, we coined the term spiritual emergency. And it's in English, it's a play on words. Emergere means emerge.
Yeah.
Okay. It can be like rising to a new level and so on. But if bad things emerge suddenly, we call it emergency room. So it's a play. It has two sides. Obviously it's challenging. It can create problems in your life, but ultimately, if it's properly understood, properly supported, it takes you to another level of consciousness.
Yeah.
We use a Chinese pictograms where if you say crisis, you put together two other pictograms, which is danger and opportunity. Crisis is a danger and opportunity. Christina started 1980 Spiritual Emergency Network, where people who are in this crisis are now informed that there are now resources. There are people who can handle it differently than put diagnoses on people and put them on tranquilizers. That there is a way, if they want, that people can help them through, like people get through the birth canal.
Yeah.
Yeah. The solution of a problematic birth is not to push the baby's head back into the birth canal. You see, the proper intervention is you do a little something that the process completes itself. And there is a self-healing intelligence that's mobilized in these holotropic states, very much like the self-healing ability of the body. If you have a splinter, even if we don't pull it out, ultimately the body will find ways of getting it out. In surgery, all the credit goes to surgeons, but we don't say that there's something a little more necessary than the surgical intervention. There's the healing, and so the healing ultimately happens, sort of self-healing, amazing self-healing intelligence, and we have the same in the psyche. In these holotropic states, you mobilize this, and it starts sort of getting out the traumatic imprints from your body. But you have to experience it to get rid of it. It has to come into consciousness. You have to experience and express the emotion, the original emotions.
But
and
when this traumatic energy stocked in the body come to get out, it looks like a crisis. But in fact, it is not. It's a healing process.
Yeah, but we need a conceptual framework. We need cartography that would say this is a normal element in the psyche because we were all born. Some of them, the natural way. There are some people where it was surgical intervention, cesarean born. But we all carry this in the psyche. This is not pathology, some unknown process that we discover, when we continue our research. This is an integral part of the human psyche. And then Carl Gustav Jung added what he called the collective unconscious. We have the history of psychoanalysis was complicated. Freud had very intelligent, creative disciples, followers, and they were sort of discovering these dimensions. There was Otto Rank, who wrote actually a book, The Trauma of Birth. And Carl Gustav Jung went even further. He said we don't have just the individual Freudian unconscious, which is basically a derivative of what happened to us after birth, what we couldn't accept, what we rejected, what we found unacceptable. But we carry collective unconscious, and the collective unconscious has two aspects. One is the historical unconscious. It's the record of the entire human history.
Experience, yeah.
And then the mythological, what we call archetypal, where we have access to figures and the areas or realms described in mythology of different cultures, even cultures that we don't know anything about. This is the basic finding of Freudian psychology. And again, for a long time we struggled with this. We started talking about Fritjof Capra when we got support from physicists. And actually physicists embraced transpersonal psychology because it made a lot of sense in new physics. They believe now that you need consciousness to create material reality.
Yeah.
According to quantum physics, it's actually the consciousness that collapses probabilities into phenomena. So consciousness participates in the creation of the material world. And so they say, what you are writing about is perfect. It just goes together with new physics, not with the 17th century Cartesian Newtonian physics, but contemporary modern physics. And then Fritjof Capra knew biology of life, and then holographic thinking that really provided for us the bridge where we understood many of the things that don't make sense, that don't seem to make sense, violating Aristotelian logic. And then at the end of this, one major breakthrough that was coming in science was always welcome in transpersonal psychology and was a little of an embarrassment for the traditional ways of thinking. Like Lord Kelvin, who played a great role in physics, talked to his student, and that student said, I would like to study physics, turn of the century, 1920s. And Lord Kelvin says, don't take the discipline, nothing new to discover, just more precise measurements. Yeah. This was 5 years before theories of relativity, and then, in the 30 years, physics was totally different. So the most helpful to me now, my hero, is Ervin Laszlo. He's a Hungarian who lives in Italy, and he solved or at least attempted very successfully to solve the paradoxes, not just in quantum physics, but in cosmology and in transpersonal psychology. He has a concept based on mathematics and physics that he used to call the psi field, PSI, and now he actually calls it Akashic field. And it's a subquantum field where everything that happens remains holographically recorded. It's like cosmic Hollywood archives. So if we go into a non-ordinary state, we can still experience things that happened in ancient Egypt or things that happened in French Revolution. And it was holography. It was the discovery of laser that made possible optical holography, and then the properties of optical holograms solve a lot of the problems that we have with mystics. The mystics say what seems to be nonsense. I am an insignificant part of the universe, but then I am the whole universe. We are all separated from each other, but we are all one. I say, what do you mean? You don't know Aristotelian logic? You have to choose. Yeah. And there's a whole new logic in a hologram. If the whole is distributed somehow in a way that if you take a little part of the hologram, you can still recreate the image. So then you have now two ways of thinking. One is in terms of what Galileo brought, again, great pioneer, great scientist, but he did something that didn't help science very much, which is science should study only what we can measure and weigh. Now, what makes life really meaningful for us are things that you cannot describe physically. There are no colors in the world. Yeah. There are vibrations of different frequencies. There are no sounds. You can't describe or communicate Beethoven's symphony by showing on a an oscillogram, you see what's happening, the vibrations. You cannot, you cannot describe Mona Lisa by knowing everything about the canvas and the colors.
Maybe it's the moment to introduce the word experience here, because in the same reality we have different experiences of the reality, and this is the beginning of the changement, when we accept that we have different experience of the same reality, and there are multiple levels of the reality that we can experience. This change everything, and is very holographic.
Well, see, in these states we discover that there are normally invisible dimensions of reality that are very real, ontologically real, but we don't have access through our senses. We have to go to a special state of mind, and we experience that. The physicists know there are invisible and inaudible dimensions of reality.
And if we begin to experience these levels of reality that normally that are not accessible, but little by little we begin to experience more and more of this huge reality, maybe this is happening now.
We discover that ultimately we're something much, much larger than what we identify with. The Hindus say, you are not nama rupa, you are not name and shape, you are not, we would say, body, ego. Your true identity is with a core of cosmic creative energy that you carry in your innermost being. And this is not a fantasy or delusion. They give you practices, yogas, and if you do that, you have a chance to get experiential confirmation. You can experience this kind of divine core, and when you have that experience, you discover this is identical with the cosmic creative energy in the universe. So this is the individual representation is Atman, and you discover that it's also Brahman. Yeah. And so if you read the Upanishads, when there's a question, who are you, who am I, they would say in Sanskrit, tat tvam asi, thou art that, with capital T, which means we are all divine beings. Yeah. And Teilhard de Chardin, a Jesuit paleontologist and philosopher from France, said we are not human beings having spiritual experiences, we are spiritual beings having human experiences.
But what seems to happen is that some time ago only few people could experience these states of consciousness, and now more and more people have this experience. And for example, the breathwork techniques, not only holotropic breathwork and other, give access to many people to have really mystical experience, to enter in touch with this level of consciousness. And it looks like more and more people have accessed this. And so maybe this is the real changement. This is the paradigm shift.
Well, this is certainly true. I mean, Elena is the only one really certified to do holotropic breathwork, because it's training. It requires training, and the two of you, you have developed a very creative modification, expansion, and so on. The heart breathwork.
It's a little bit the same what you were saying before. The heart breathwork really give access through certain kind of respiration to live as an experience different levels of the reality that normally we don't perceive. So look, and we see this in every seminar. More and more. You see,
the major problem here is you have to experience those states to even believe that they are possible and that they are real.
Yes.
Otherwise, it would be like studying with your mind a sexual orgasm, and you have never experienced it. Let's say you're pre-adolescent, and now you would get lecture about how important this force can be. It can change people's lives and all kinds of things that people can can do when they have that experience. But unless you have it, you don't understand. Once we, once we reach adolescence, we know what we are dealing with. And so if you read mystical books and you never had or transpersonal books and you never had an experience, it's very, very difficult.
Yeah, for us it's very important, the experience. And when we're working with groups, it's very interesting that the people, even if they have a different experience, they can feel their experience passed on the same levels. And they can confront their experience between them, and this brings really trust in their experience. When you see another lived a little bit the same experience, not the same, but however, this brings trust. Maybe it's a question of trust.
I don't know how it is here, but in the United States, if you have a team of psychiatrists and psychologists, they are trying to hide that they have had any kind of unusual experiences because it would compromise you. Whereas in transpersonal psychology and holotropic breathwork, it adds to your qualification because you now know more about the psyche. And we have in the United States a lot of emotional problems, with the professionals. You are now working with difficult emotions, and you don't have yourself some way of clearing it. And so many psychiatrists, psychologists talk about burnout, and they sort of regret that they have taken psychology because it all became pharmacology, suppressing symptoms, side effects. And there's little real psychology then in psychiatry. You don't get a burnout working with non-ordinary state. I mean, it's to bring sort of excitement and energy and so on. So it would help actually if people could have, the profession could have those experiences. And when they had the experiences, their praxis can really, really change. We have seen it many times, but we have to also change our attitude to it, as long as we believe that it's pathology when you have that experience.
The good news that are more and more people are experiencing this, and including here doctors. You met already doctors and neurologists, and they had this experience.
I don't know how it is here, but in the United States, all you have to do to become an expert on people's problems, you get medical training, and then you get 3 years of what's called residency. There's no requirement to look inside to find anything inside. Some people choose psychoanalysis, for example, personal training analysis, but it's not required. You don't have to do anything looking into your, you can really learn a lot about psyche by looking inside of yourself. Not just about yourself, but about the psyche. But it's just so far, in the United States, it's not a requirement.
Yeah. Well, Stanislav Grof, thank you very much for this interesting discussion. And before to finish our discussion, I want to thank you for this book that we just published, The Holotropic Breathwork. We just launched it, and it's a kind of tribute to the work and of Stanislav Grof and Christina Grof, to the spirituality and the transpersonal psychology.
And
thank you.
You have published many of other books.
Yeah, many, but this is the last one, and we are very glad to have made this book with this occasion. If
you allow me just two words, okay?
Yeah.
We had a lot of hesitation about publishing this book because we really wanted to describe exactly what it is, so that when people are doing holotropic breathwork, that they know that this is the original idea, or at least a significant part of it is that the basic principles are followed. And it can be easily mistaken for a cookbook. Like if I read this book, not only I can do it by myself, but I can now have a workshop because I have a recipe for that. So there are like at least 3-4 serious warnings. This is This is not a self-help book.
Yeah.
If you get interested by the material, find somebody who is certified. There's a certification program. I think all the information is in the back of the book for people who would like to become facilitators of this work. And if somebody is offering you holotropic breathwork, you ask them, are you certified?
Yeah.
Because sometimes people come to...
So maybe we could write on the book, don't try this home.
Yeah.
On your own.
On your own. Yeah.
Yeah. So.
And you have the same problem with the hard breath work. You know, people think when they can spend a weekend with you, they are now experts.
Yeah.
We had actually a situation where somebody came to weekend workshop and started doing, workshops, a holotropic breathwork in Los Angeles, and they had in their biography, trained by Stan and Christina Grof. Means I took one of their weekend workshops.
Yeah.
Now the training, lasts like a couple of years, and people have to do a lot of inner work, and so I have to really make a comment about this book. This is not a self-help book.
Yeah.
It's not something.
So in fact, it's an instrument or an information book for those interested about the holotropic breathwork as instrument, but not. It doesn't give access to do this.
I think you can get a lot of
alone.
Sort of intellectual information. Professionals can get a lot of, if they believe what's in that book, they can get a lot of information. But it's not enough to read the book, to start actually doing it. It's very easy to induce a holotropic state of consciousness, but when people are in it, you really need experience how to handle it, how to close it properly, and so on.
Yeah.
So thanks again for the.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thanks for the Romanian people for the warm reception, and what we have written down in our books is. They're open for confirmation or rejection. We hope that future generations would replicate that research, and then they either think this was, useful information for the development in psychology, or they say this whole thing was crazy. But you cannot do it without really having experience, personal experience, and having worked with people in those states, so that you really can confirm it or reject it. Yeah.
As you said in one of your interviews that we made together, spirituality is not a question of belief, but a question of experience. Thank you, Stanislav Grof, and maybe we'll meet again in Romania.
You're a wonderful interviewer. Thank you.